Markets rising in anticipation for reduced scope tariffs. What began with Friday's flexibility teaser, markets are gaining momentum ahead of what they hope are reduced scope tariffs incoming next week. Markets began the rally Friday midday after the White House teased that there'll be flexibility for the incoming tariffs. Then we got some leaks over the weekend with reports that the next batch of tariffs will be more focused and likely limited to a dozen or so countries. Since, markets have latched onto the optimism, up almost 2% to start this week. However, outside of the tease and weekend leaks, there's still essentially no new information, just speculation. So let's take a look at the tariffs so far and what this could mean. The broad Canada and Mexico's 25% tariffs have essentially been delayed twice. First in February, after deals to promise more border security, and then followed by a full start in March after some trade war back and forth. However, they are still set to go into effect next week. We'll have to see if the flexibility extends to them and if they'll be reworked to be more specific and targeted. Meanwhile, China's broad tariffs went into effect February and then doubled in March. China has retaliated with tariffs in return both times. We think it's unlikely to see any tariff shifts here. If anything, we'll see if the White House tacks on more tariffs to China next week. And finally, markets are waiting for the global reciprocal tariffs to be announced. The 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum have already been imposed, and trade war threats escalated a couple weeks ago. The EU threatened targeted retaliatory tariffs on goods like whiskey, jeans, and peanut butter, while the US threatened back 200% tariffs on wine. So the markets have been hoping the White House would dial back the aggression. The hopes likely increased after the EU delayed its retaliatory tariffs by a couple of weeks to allow for negotiation. However, we think it's unlikely the EU will avoid tariffs this round. The White House has accused the EU repeatedly of unfair trading practices. But the EU is the US's largest trading partner, and any trade war would likely have consequences. While we're hopeful that the White House is actually dialing back the tariff rhetoric, we could see the market also being overly optimistic after the pessimism from March. I guess we'll see.